If you're working on a big research project, whether you're in college, graduate school, or working independently, keeping track of the sources you access can help organize your research, thoughts, and time in ways that will strengthen both your current project and future projects to come. Today I'm going to show you how I organize my research. Let's get started. The reason what I'm going to share today is useful is because, especially for those of you who are PhD students, DPhil students, anyone working on a long-term project over multiple years, you might not always know at the beginning of a project what will be important to you at the end. By keeping track of all the sources you access along the way, it makes it much easier down the road to go back and review sources that previously you perhaps didn't think were going to be as helpful as later they turned out to be. Also, for those of you who are undergraduate or graduate students writing a dissertation, you will probably be expected to provide a literature review discussing the state of scholarship in your field and the contribution that your particular dissertation is making. Now, this is where I made a mistake in graduate school, because at first I only kept track of the sources that inspired me or were very exciting and that I knew I wanted to include in my research in a positive way. But what I didn't realize is that even sources that are unhelpful can actually provide helpful information as to what is or is not happening in your scholarly field. So it will save you a great deal of time when writing your literature review if you keep track of all sources you access, both helpful and unhelpful, in advance. Okay, so that's the intro. Let's get to the chart. Let's take a look. So this, as you can see, is a very simple Excel chart. You can make one yourself. I'll also include a copy of this one below in the comments in case anyone is interested. I like to keep track of the date, the time, and the time will become important later, the library I went to, the title of the book, as well as the call number. And the call number I like to hyperlink to where I found this resource online. So if I found it on a college library website, or if it's a public domain resource available online, I find it personally helpful to link it here. Now, some libraries allow limited amounts of scanning and reproduction, and I also include that here, making a note of what scan, what picture I took, and what it was. So, page 1, picture of ABC. Now, this is where the time becomes important. So personally, if I'm going through a lot of books, I might not keep track of every single time. So I might not do 9 a.m., 9:02 a.m., 9:04 a.m., 9:06 a.m., because that interrupts the workflow. But I always keep track of the time if I suddenly take a scan. Now, the reason for this is if you have some kind of computer disaster, and knocking on wood, that won't happen, but I had 3 computer breakdowns before critical deadlines in my DPhil career, and what saved me in later times is that I kept track of the timestamp along with what it was. So in the event that your computer naming files get corrupted, then you can go back and say, okay, the computer, whatever disaster happened, it changed all the names of my files and just gave them numbers, but I can go back and see, okay, well, I took 2 photos I took 1 photo at 9 a.m., so I know it's that one. Now, I'll actually make a separate video on how to organize your research scans so that you do not have the computer breakdown malfunction situation. But personally, I find this very helpful as a way to keep track just in case. Now, notes. So this is important. I always like to keep track of what it was I was actually looking for, because a book that I might have dismissed because, let's say, it didn't have any information on DEF, I might later not be interested in DEF. I might be interested in some other thing. And by going back, I can say, well, I looked at that book and it wasn't very helpful, but maybe it was because I was looking for something completely different. I put comments on what I took and then say I keep my notes in a separate file and say I took notes on this chapter. Now, I also like to include a follow-up. So let's say it's right before lunch and I know I have other plans. I'll make a little note and say, come back tomorrow, finish chapter 3. And I like to highlight these. There we go. I highlight these so that I know, come back. And once I'm done and I did come back and I finished whatever the follow-up may be, whether it's go read another book first and then come back to this once you know a little bit more, then I just like to gray it out so I know that I took care of that. Now, as you can see, very simple chart. I personally like to keep my secondary sources and my primary sources separate. I also use a separate chart for archive visits, which happy to go into if anyone is interested in that. So as you can see, this saves a lot of time later, not initially, but later, it will make it much easier to go back and check all your sources. And the other reason to do this is pride. There are some dark days of the PhD DPhil. Those of you in doctoral programs know what I mean. And it is very satisfying after a long day, after a long week of research, when maybe you didn't find exactly what you had hoped for, to go and scroll through all the hard work you did and see that even if the sources weren't exactly what you had hoped for, or even if that your time spent in the library didn't yield the results you had been hoping for, you are still putting in quite a lot of effort that is gradually leading you closer to your goal, closer to the sources that will make a big impact in your research. I hope this was helpful. Thank you very much for listening, and best of luck with all your research.